All right, I'm gonna work on a new Flutter project. Just a little personal thing. I like to use my Notes app a lot on my phone for many things, but the goal right now is, rather than using my Notes app to track what groceries I want and then scramble through the store to, get things and realize, oh, there was something else in produce, I want to make a better way to do that. So I've started a new project just with the Flutter create, calling this Listy. So assuming you have Flutter installed, really all I've done other than opening up and starting my simulator is running Flutter create. I called it Listy. And then I did a Flutter pub get just to install the default packages. And then I ran it just through VS Code. Okay, so this gives us the sort of default stuff. We're just going to clear out some things here because I know what all these comments mean. And in fact, we are going to literally get rid of this my home page and just totally get rid of it there. And you'll see we have this error because my home page doesn't exist. So let's make a home page. So I like to, in my lib folder, have a new folder, project this size. Sometimes I'll break things into modules, but we can just have one primary module right inside the lib. So we'll make a folder called screens, and we're going to make a new file, and we'll call it I'll just call it list screen dot dart. We go in here and we can write STL to just get a stateless widget going, and we will call this list screen. And you'll notice a lot of errors, and that's because we have to import in material, and we can do that just by doing control space, and we'll auto find it, and you'll see it imported it, and now everything's good. Now we actually don't want a container here, we want a scaffold, and let's give the scaffold an app bar and give it a title of my list, except that needs to be inside a text widget, not just a string on its own. And if we go back here and we instead do list screen, we'll be off to the races. And when we refresh, we'll see my list here. Amazing. So nothing really on it, but it's there. Obviously, we're going to want some kind of plus button, and I think rather than having in the top right, this is a perfect opportunity to actually use a floating action button. And there's going to be a floating action button. It's going to have an onPressed event, which we will do later. And it's going to obviously have a child. I believe I just put text here. Actually, no, sorry, an icon. And we'll do icons.add. And click save. And then we got this guy here. Amazing. Oh, right. There's also some little things I just want to do on any new project. Like there's this debug thing here. Now in VS Code, there's a way to sort of turn it off through the code, through the interface settings. But I like to just do it right in the material app so that everything is good. And to do that, it is right on material app. We can do debug show checked mode banner, and we're gonna do false, just so it doesn't show up and get in our way. We know it's a debug. We know we're debugging right now. Okay, very good. So a few things we're gonna want to do here. What we're going to do, ultimately, as we go through this in the future, the data will be stored on a database somewhere, probably Firebase, maybe something else. But for now, we'll kind of just work with mocks and get our data sort of going. So let's start figuring that out. So I'm going to make a new folder called models, and in here we're going to have, I think we could just call it, let's call it a grocery item, because we might want to eventually, have different kind of lists. So we'll call it grocery item.dart, and we're making a model, so it just has a class of grocery item, as we're calling it. It doesn't extend anything, it's just a default model, and we're gonna have a few things. Oops, not final, but we're gonna give it a, we'll use an int for ID for now. We're going to have a string called name. We're also going to have a there's going to be like a category or something like that, which we'll do in a bit. And we will have a Boolean representing whether or not it is been purchased. Then what we want is a good way to instantiate these. Now, knowing that eventually there will be an API, I do want to do this way. So what we're going to do is have what's called a factory, where we can create a grocery item by passing in JSON. And JSON is going to be, it's a map with keys of string and dynamic data. And grocery item from JSON, So anytime we call this function, we're expecting some stuff. So we can say this.id equals JSON ID. This.name equals JSON name. And this.purchased equals JSON purchased. So you can imagine an API, with that looks something like, name, blah, 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 sorry, et cetera, and that would get passed in here and it would create it. Oh, right. Now, bear with me for a minute. I haven't worked too much with Null Safety yet, so I might not do this exactly the right way at first, but we can always fix it later. So we want to make sure that these can be nullable. I think it's just one sec. See, part of coding is always Googling. Dart allow null. Yeah, oh, right. So we can make these like this, and then all those things go away. Awesome. Now, and the reason I'm doing that is because in theory, we're going to use the same model to create items, and obviously at the point of creating it, it's not going to have a name. It's not going to, and in fact, actually purchased, we can probably just set a default of false. So purchase, we can actually make nullable, whereas name and ID would not. Okay, another model we need to handle this category will be, let's call it a grocery item category. Just be really verbose here. And in fact, actually, you know what? We're not going to make this a model. Getting rid of that. We're actually going to make just an enum called grocery. We can just call it category. Let's just call it category. And we're going to have different things in here. So produce, for instance, bakery, we have dairy. And the way I'm thinking about this is more about when you're going to the grocery store, you go to the produce section, you go to the bakery section, you go to the dairy section. We're also, there might be usually your grocery store will have like frozen. Obviously, there'd be more. And then we can just start with that because we can always add, more. And then I like to just have like, aisle stuff that's in aisles, so that as you're kind of going through, you can check. We could break this into a lot more. I think also having just like household, and that's like, cleaning products, that kind of stuff, toilet paper. And then we'll just do miscellaneous as kind of like a catch-all. And in fact, we could choose now to have like a default here for the category, which we need to make. So it's going to be a type category, and we'll just call it category. And that's all good there, except we're getting the same error. So either we need to set this a default, and I like that idea, just so if you don't put one in, it'll always be miscellaneous. But then our UI, it's kind of like you might mistakenly, forget to categorize something, and then this becomes kind of useless. So let's just make it nullable and allow that. Now we have to remember to go this.category equals JSON category. Now, because this will be an API, obviously we're not going to be getting back. This is an enum, so it's really 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Probably our API will have something that's a little more, it'll be these words, maybe like lowercase. So we actually need a good way to convert that stuff. So what I've found I like to do is actually create a class, a property on here. So we're gonna go get category from category from string. We're gonna have something like that, and then we're also gonna have one that's called get string from category. And this is just kind of a way to serialize back and forth. So we have that. Not doing anything yet. So we also need something to remember these things, to basically map them together. So what I like to do is create a const. So this is just compiled at runtime. We'll call it category or grocery item category map. And in here, we're essentially going to take every one of these guys, category.produce, and it's going to be equal to produce. You know, and based on however we set our API is how we're going to you know, name these things, but likely our API would have them sort of stored like this. They could even be stored as 1, 0, whatever. So let's just copy and paste this a bunch of times, and we will put these guys all in. Bakery, dairy, frozen, aisle, household, and miscellaneous. And we spelled aisle wrong. And then it wants us to have a semicolon. So now that we sort of have this map, this is actually really easy to do. When we want to get a category, oh, let's do the first. This one's actually easier. String from category. So all we're really returning, and sorry, this can't be a get. My mistake. These are just going to be functions. And the string from category is obviously going to return a string, and this is going to return a category. So we just put those ahead of there. So in string from category, all we're really doing, we're expecting to pass in a category, and we'll do that like that. And we would just return grocery item.category map category. Right. Okay, that seems right to me. Right, okay, this should actually be, I want to actually make these static classes because there's something that it's something that we want to be able to use without even having an instance. So this should return this. I wonder if, okay, string can't be returned from this method, string from category, because it has a return type of string. I guess this is just a null safety thing, like putting that there, because I guess in theory, you know, you might not have something that matches those. So we'll just do that. The other way is we want to essentially return that grocery item category map, and we want to kind of loop through all the entries, and we want to find the first one where element.value is equal to, and we'll call this just category as well. And this is actually going to be passed in as a string, category. And similarly, we need to kind of put this here. Oh, I missed one thing. Right, we want to return actually the key of it. So basically what this, we pass in a string, and it would loop through all those to find the first one where, you know, dairy, and it's going to return the key. So in this case, category.dairy, which category.dairy is dairy, which is actually in this case under the hood 0, 1, 2, but it doesn't matter. Once we have the enums, we don't ever have to think about the numbers. They all just will work. So just a little bit of boilerplate here for this stuff. Now there's some other things we might want to do here. For instance, we might, you know, want to present the category in a nice way, because in our UI, like, we don't want to say, you know, when we're doing the category, we want to be able to give it its presentation name. So we could make a whole other map for the names, but probably an easier way to do that, at least for now. We'll make a getter. This one can be a getter, and we'll call it category label. And it's going to return this so if we were to just return this dot category, it would return the value, which if you were to just present it, would literally be a number. So we actually want to take string from category. So we would actually want to return, and because it's a static class, we would say grocery item. Just autocomplete that, dot string from category, and we would go this dot category. Can't be, wait, the argument category can't be assigned. And I guess we just need a sort of like a null check here. If this dot category equals null, we'll just return kind of like a string like this. So if there isn't a category, we're just going to return like a dash. And again, getting pretty new with the null safety stuff, so I might mess up some things. But anyways, we have this model. It's pretty basic, but it'll allow us to do stuff. So what I'd probably like to do next is actually make a whole new folder called mocks. And this is where we'll be putting like our temporary data. And this is so we don't right now have to build an API just to do stuff. So I'm going to make a new file in here called grocery items.dart. I also realize my naming conventions are not what I would normally do. Usually I name things lowercase underscore spacing, and we're just going to make that fix right now. I go between many programming languages and sometimes do things wrong. Not that it matters, but that's just the convention. And actually, I'm just going to rename this to grocery item mock.dart, just so it's really clear this is a mock. So what I'm going to do is we're going to create, and this can be a const. It'll just be our, at build time, and we'll just call it like items and equals this, and we can actually put in some things here. So grocery item, and it's actually a list of grocery items. That way we get a little bit more IntelliSense and everything. For instance, sorry, actually no. This is not what we want. What we are actually passing in is a list of map string dynamic, because we're trying to make this feel like what our API will be like in the future. And if we open up these two things side by side, we can kind of get an idea of what we might want. So let's put in, first of all, an ID, and we'll just do 1. We'll do a name of milk. We will give it a category, and we'll call that dairy to keep with the theme. And then we'll have we're not going to even put in purchased, we're just going to have that. Actually, no, let's do it. Purchased and false. So we have some items. Then let's just copy this. Let's have like 2 items. Sure. And we'll do bread. And this is bakery, and it's also not purchased. Okay, so now we have these items, and we're actually going to call them grocery items. Sorry, this little guy's over top of what I'm working on. There we go. So grocery items, cool. And one sec. Okay, well, we have our mock of items. That's very good. So let's just leave them right there. Okay, so back in our main.dart, for some reason it's not saved. Let's let's just name this app something else, listy. Now in our screen that we made, we obviously want to, have these guys listed in here. So we are inside our scaffold. We're going to make a body, and we're just going to start, and we'll wrap more things around it. We're just going to create a list view, and we're going to use a builder. And our item builder takes context and takes an index. But before that, I like to put the item count, and that's going to be equal to, in this case, 2, but obviously we want that to be dynamic. So I'm not just going to write the number 2. Instead, we are going to, right in our build, we're going to make a final items equals, and I should just be able to type grocery items, and it'll auto import from that mock. And then we can basically go, right, there is one, okay. This actually, let's do it this way first, and then we will get there. So items.length, cool. And let's just this needs to be a function that actually returns something. And for now, I'm just going to return, I think, a card, and I'm just going to put a child of text. And inside that text, we are going to do something. Now, while we're in this loop, essentially, we're going to make a variable called item, and it's going to be equal to items in whatever index we're on. That's the way the builder works. It's going to loop through however many things you have, incrementing the index each time so that you can get that specific one. And because right now item, this isn't actually that model we made yet, we actually need to access it like this, and we'll just do name. And if we save now, we're actually going to see we got our milk and we got our bread. So that's pretty cool. Now, because there will be an API at some point, we should probably make something to retrieve these things. So I'm going to make a new folder called services. Oops. New folder called services. And we're going to make it grocery item service.dart class grocery item service. Okay. And what we're going to do is make a do some stuff here that essentially allows us to call an API and that kind of stuff. We won't get to the API yet, but we will have this architected so that it'll be pretty easy when we do build the backend. One sec. Having a small technical difficulty. Okay, technical difficulty solved. I think. No, not solved. Oh, right. Yeah, new thing in VS Code, you can actually have sort of these things side by side, which is pretty cool. Still getting used to the new stuff. Okay. So for now, we're going to have something called a grocery item service, and we're going to have a function in it called list. And it's going to actually return a future. So an asynchronous thing. And it's going to return a future list of grocery item. And we'll call it list. And we may at some point want to add parameters, you know, like maybe you want an ordering field, or you want, you know, a specific filter, or, you know, whatever the case is. But for now, we will just call it list. And then it is actually an async function. Ultimately, like, this is where we would, you know, call our API and, you know, return a delayed sort of thing. So what we're going to do now is actually make something called data, and it's going to be equal to that, what was it, grocery items. So that's like the data ultimately that we'll be getting back from our API. Now, in order to sort of emulate the idea of asynchronousness, I like to kind of, in these mocks, do an await and do a future.delayed of, let's do milliseconds. Oh wait, sorry. Future.delayed, and then you have to pass in a duration of milliseconds. Let's do 300. You know, that's almost like a third of a second, basically. So that will mean, you know, it's going to hang for a bit, and then stuff will show up. So that emulates, you know, what will happen in the real world. Then, because this data is kind of like as JSON, we need to construct it. So we're going to create actually that list. It'll be a list of grocery item, and it's going to be called results, and it's going to be equal to, we want to essentially take whatever that data is and map it, and it's going to be a grocery item. And for each item that's in there, so each of these, like these JSON objects, essentially, we actually want to take that grocery item dot from JSON that we made and actually pass in that JSON. And in fact, let's call this JSON just so it's really clear what it is. And then at the we need to then turn it into a list. Okay. We have a couple warnings, but we'll get there. Let's just make this a bit bigger. Then obviously what we're going to return is results. So everything looks good, no more errors. So we have this really simple service. Now, in order to work with this service, there's a couple of ways we could do it. I've been using RiverPod recently, and I do enjoy it. So let's just look for RiverPod on PubDev. Specifically Flutter RiverPod. In theory, you could just use regular RiverPod, but the Flutter one just has some more things that we will need. We'll go to the install. We will go here. PubSpec. And we need to find, oh yeah, there's like nothing in this project yet. Awesome. So let's put this dependency. Now we should automatically, VS Code should automatically be like, oh, something changed there. Let's do something about that, and it'll get it. So now that we have it, we are able to do some stuff here. So there's many ways to work with RiverPod. What I find works really well is I actually create something that's exportable that we can use. And I like to just run this function called export, or I create this function called export, and a service is going to be equal to, and then we use, this is where we start using the RiverPod stuff. So it's a provider, and we want to make a reference to the grocery item service. So we do that. Then we need to make what's called a container, and it's provider container, which is another thing that's part of RiverPod. Then what we want to do is return the container reading the service we made. So we have this. Now this isn't executing now. So what we actually want to return, hence there's not going to be an underscore here, is we'll call it grocery item service, and it's going to be equal to the return of this function. So there we go. You don't really need this in a function. You could, in theory, have all this stuff here and blah blah blah. The reason I like this is because this is underscored, it's not going to be exposed to the outside world. So you kind of just keep everything in here. Whereas this part that ultimately just executes this function and basically is getting this right here is exposed because there's no underscore. So grocery item service we now have. So let's see if we can replace some stuff here. So what we actually want to do on build, and what we're going to do is actually convert this to a stateful widget now. You can do that with Control-Shift-R, convert to stateful widget, because really I don't want this to happen during the build. I want this to be happening when this screen initializes. So we can do an override of init state, and sorry, init state is a void function, doesn't return anything, and we of course want to go super.init state before we do anything else. And then what I've been liking is I actually create a function just called init. This is my own function, and it's actually going to be a future that returns void called init. That way we can just do whatever we want asynchronously. You can't use async within here because it's not a future. So I like to just kind of do my own init here. Otherwise, you kind of have to use like callbacks, and I'd rather just use await. So what we can do now is actually go await grocery item service, and we have to import that dot list. Now we obviously want to cast this to something, so I'm just going to make a variable called final items equals that. Then we need in here a list of grocery item, and we'll call it items, as we are already kind of doing here. And we want to, after the init happens, is go set state items equals items. Now I need to, should be actually using this right here. This will be underscore, this will not, and semicolon, and we want to also, let's just instantiate this as a as an empty array. So there we go. Then instead of this, we can actually remove this line and just use items.length, items.index. And then, yeah, see, now we're starting to see this error because the items themselves are now these models, this grocery item thing. So the cool thing is we can now actually go item.name because it can understand what that is. And here we go, we're getting the null safety sort of stuff. So in fact, let's go to our model right now. And let's make name required, but we'll just make it an empty string at first. And I think that, at least for now, will be good. Oops. Okay, so nothing happened, and I think it's just because we made a change in state. We changed this to a stateful widget, and this init state, because we're just doing a live reload, isn't actually being called. So I think if we just do a green refresh, we're going to get something. At least we have an error. Okay, so string is not subtype of category. Awesome. That makes sense, actually, if I'm remembering correctly. So we are just saying this .category equals JSON category. That's not going to work. We actually need to call this function here. So because we want to get a category back from a string. Now what I want to do is just make sure it is not null. So if it's not null, we're going to call grocery item. This is a static method, so we have to say what it is. Grocery item dot category from string, and we're going to pass in JSON category. Otherwise, now is this nullable right now? It is nullable, so we can just say null. Or we could, in this case, if for some reason the backend's like there is no category, let's just set it to category.miscellaneous. So now if we refresh, possibly. Very good, look at that. Okay, that's pretty awesome. 34 minutes in the video, we have a lot. I mean, this is super, there's nothing really happening, but there's a lot going on. Which I think is pretty sweet. Okay, so let's make this stuff look a little bit better. Let's just close, I like to close things really often. We'll go back to our list screen. So we're no longer calling this in anymore because we're actually using the service we made, so we can get rid of that. Let's make this stuff a bit prettier. So we could, of course, at this point, just wrap this in, wrap this card in some padding and add a row and all that kind of stuff. But I think this deserves its own component. So we're going to make a new folder called components, and we're going to call this grocery item card dart. And it's a stateless widget, at least for now. Grocery item card. And we need to import material. And I just do it that way. Now, the grocery item card, we want to make sure that it has a grocery item associated with it. And we're going to call this grocery item. And we need to make sure that when we instantiate, this .grocery item is set, and we want this to be required. If you haven't used Null Safety, this is one of the things I know, very few things. You used to have to do @required pre-Null Safety, and that was kind of just I think more like a type safe sort of thing. But now with Null Safety, it's literally the word Dart allows you to use just the word required. And then you'll notice without this, you start to get some errors because it's saying it could have a value of null, and this has to be required. So you know, we either have to put a question mark here, but we never want a card without a grocery item associated with it. So instead, we'll make it required here. And let's actually literally just take what we made here and paste it here for now. Grocery item .name, just to see if this works. So now instead of returning the card here, we're actually going to return a grocery item card, and we need to pass in, you know, the item itself as grocery item. So I think that just worked. I'm going to refresh to make sure, but yeah, there's our guys there. So this is nice because now instead of bloating up our list screen, we of course can start making it here. So first of all, the card itself looks fine. We definitely want some padding within the card, so wrap in padding. So now we're looking a bit better. You know, we might want to use a different style here. Now, before we get into that, actually, yeah, let's just do text style. We're just gonna do this in a really basic way. We'll add some other stuff later. Let's just try 18, so it gets a bit bigger. Now that's cool. Now underneath, basically, I think we want this whole thing in a row. So we'll wrap in row, and we're gonna add a icon button here on pressed. Nothing yet. Icons dot. I think there's like a checkbox outline. Let's use that. So now we get this guy here. Now I'm thinking that these should be separated, so we can do main axis alignment dot space between, and that will put space between these things, and that's really good. Now cool. Now we probably want this text here. Let's put another column. Just for fun, and we're going to put some text under this, and it's going to be grocery item dot category label, so that we kind of get this little, oh, it's in the dairy, it's in the bakery. Now we're going to be breaking this up in a different way, so at some point, and we might end up, you know, removing that. Now I said, you know, I mentioned this, the category label, we're basically just sending back that string. I think it kind of makes sense to do a, you know, maybe it's something like to uppercase. Oh, you know what? Let's not worry about that, because you got to deal with all that null stuff. But that looks fine, and let's wrap this in a container, so that we can kind of make it look like a little label. So we'll give it a color of colors dot amber, sure, and that will, you know, kind of make them highlighted. And obviously, well, not obviously, but let's put some padding around that text of just, you know, something pretty small, just so it's not quite touching the edges. And you know, it doesn't look great, but it looks fine. And we can add just a little size box with a height of maybe 4, just to space these guys out a little bit more. Sweet. And if this was 40, you'll see that you know, these things still stay centered, and it's pretty sweet. Okay, we got some sweet little guys here. Everything is looking good. Now we want to obviously have a way to, you know, checkbox these things. which we'll just worry about the UI now because there is no API yet. But what we want to do is we're going to make the grocery item card. Actually, let's do this properly. Let me just, I like to put in these little commas so everything gets nice and spread out, but there we go. What I want to do is actually make a new file, and what we're actually, sorry, what we're going to do, we're going to do this here, and then we're going to move some stuff over. Yeah, let's just do it all here for now. We can refactor later. So what I want to do is actually make this now a stateful widget. That way we can, you know, do stuff. And on pressed, essentially what we want to do is take whatever our item is. So this dot grocery item, sorry, widget, because now you have to actually say widget because we're in a class outside of that. So widget allows us to talk to stuff that's here. Widget dot grocery item dot purchased equals, and I'm just going to copy this, not purchased. So that's essentially a way to toggle. It's going to do either on or off. Now, if we click this, we're not going to see anything, and that's because we need to update the state. Set state, and we can actually, I believe, just do it that way. So it is, I think it's working, but we didn't actually ever do anything to be like, change the icon. So we need to, what we can do is this icon, we can say if it's purchased, we do a specific icon. If not, do a different icon. And this is just a ternary function. So I think I can just use checkbox. And there you go. So now we can click them off. Now, you know, this functionality, aside from updating the UI, we would obviously want to make an API call here to be like, you know, set this as purchase so that if you close the app and come back, it remembers. But this is fine for now. Now, what I was saying is, I think this might be, no, I think it's fine. I was thinking we could probably break this into its own component, but like, I don't think there's going to be any other spot with this sort of check. But yeah, maybe there will. Let's just do it. So in VS Code, you can go like this, and you can go extract widget, and we will call this grocery item checkbox. And then yes, we get this lovely right, because so we'll just do it manually, and that's totally fine. Grocery item checkbox dot dart. And this will be a, we'll start with it as a stateless widget. I pretty much always start stateless, even if I know it won't be. Checkbox, doo-doo-doo-doo. And similarly, and we could probably just copy and paste this, we need to, you can almost copy and paste it. I'm going to paste this, grocery item checkbox. Oops, no, that one's fine. We need to import this. So now it's expecting us to obviously paste in a thing. I'm going to take all of this here and bring it, return this. Now, before I paste that, actually, let's convert this into a stateful widget so that the widget is good. Override build. The body might complete normally, causing null to be returned, but the return is potentially non-nullable. I'm confused about that one. Oh, because I didn't write the word return. There we go. So now what we can do is, I'm actually going to undo a bunch of stuff here. Now that we have this new thing, I want to go back to, I want to basically go back to when we were a stateless widget, because this in theory can now be stateless. And all we have to do here, we have grocery item checkbox, which we need to import, and we want to pass grocery item of grocery item. And if everything's good, we save. So now, this is now, you know, a completely stateless widget because nothing actually changes with the widget itself. But it does have a child that is a stateful widget because this is where, you know, any action is having Now, if we wanted to add, removing things from the list, like actually like deleting them, this would probably have to become a stateful widget again. But for the purposes of now, we are good. The more you can use stateless widgets, the better. Okay. All right, what did I want to do next? Obviously, we need a way to add items, delete them, remove them, that kind of stuff. But I wanted to do some other just housekeeping things. Okay. Yeah. All right, something I like to do is right in my lib, make a new file called theme.dart. And we're just going to go class theme colors. This is just a convention that I like to do. It's just a way so that instead of using theme context all the time throughout your app, which is kind of a lot of extra work, you can kind of just do stuff here. So I'm going to make a static const, so it's not being interpreted at runtime. Primary, and it's going to be equal to color, and let's just do colors dot. We have to import material or whatever this is part of. Yeah, material. And let's just for now use. Let's find a cool color we like. Deep orange, sure. So we have that, and then in our main.dart, see how we have this theme area primary swatch. We can actually now refer to theme colors dot primary. And you'll see that that changes everything. Now, nothing fancy is happening there. I just like to kind of keep all this stuff in one spot. So for instance, we might have, our secondary color, our text color, our, whatever kind of stuff. And you can do, colors dot whatever, or you can use, RGBO to import in very specific colors, all that kind of stuff. Similarly, I like to have something called theme text, and we can make, a static const of, let's do body text and, body text, and it's going to be equal to a text style of, font size 14, font weight dot maybe like 500, color, and this is where we can pull a color. Now I don't want to use primary for this, so let's make another thing called just like text, and it's going to be colors dot black 87 or something. Beauty of this, you can change this all in one spot, and then your whole app will reflect. So we would actually here do theme colors dot text, and height, which is line height in text, we'll do 1.2. I think most of this right now is defaults anyways, but it's nice to sort of set this stuff up. So now let's have that. Let's also just make, body text, and we'll have one called caption. And caption will essentially be like, smaller. We won't even do anything to the font weight. We will just make it, maybe we have another variable called text light. And this would be, if that was 87, this would maybe be 54. We can experiment with this. There we go, text light. And height of, same line height. So now we have a couple things we can use, which gets in, is pretty handy. So for instance, if we wanted to use those, where do we do this? We have this thing here. Instead, we can actually go theme text. That's the class that we made, and we can say body text here. And okay, it's a little bit different, but that's fine. And then same with this here. We have this category. We didn't do anything with, and in fact, I can remove this widget. I don't really want this anymore. Remove. And for style, instead of typing it all out and figuring it out, or using the equivalent would be, you could do theme.of_context.caption, or not caption, because that's not one of the built-in ones, but like I think it's .text theme .body text 2, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of cumbersome to write. And then you still have to configure all this stuff in your main.dart. So I kind of like this. I don't know if it's the best way to do it, but it's worked on quite a few apps that I've done. So we can just do theme text.caption, and then you get that nice thing. And yeah, I like it because you kind of just have this one file. It's like your CSS file kind of for colors and for text. And obviously you could have other things in here too, but this generally works. And yeah, if you made some other change somewhere, as you add more, you can just change it in one spot. Like, we might be calling this primary thing on a bunch of things, but I could make this red, and then all of a sudden everything's going to change based on that setting. But I'm good with deep orange. All right, that's it for this first little thing. We'll catch you next time.